dispose them in a great many ways. 14. The human mind is capable of perceiving a great many things, and this capacity will vary in proportion to the varieties of states which its body can assume. 15. The idea which constitutes the formal being of the human mind is not simple, but composed of very many ideas. 16. The idea of any mode wherein the human body is affected by external bodies must involve the nature of the human body together with the nature of the external body. 17. If the human body is affected in a way, modo, that involves the nature of some external body, the human mind will regard that same external body as actually existing, or as present to itself, until the human body undergoes a further modification, which excludes the existence or presence of the said body. 18. If the human body has once been affected by two or more bodies at the same time, when the mind afterwards imagines one of them, it will straightway remember the others too. 19. The human mind has no knowledge of the body, nor does it know it to exist, except through ideas of the affections by which the body is affected. 20. There is also in God the idea or knowledge of the human mind, and this follows in God and is related to God in the same way as the idea or knowledge of the human body. 21. This idea of the mind is united to the mind in the same way as the mind is united to the body. 22. The human mind perceives not only the affections of the body, but also the ideas of those affections. 23. The mind does not know itself, except in so far as it perceives ideas of affections of the body. 24. The human mind does not involve an adequate knowledge of the component parts of the human body. 25. The idea of any affection of the human body does not involve an adequate knowledge of an external body. 26. The human mind does not perceive any external body as actually existing, except through the ideas or of affections of its own body. 27. The idea of any affection of the human body does not involve adequate knowledge of the human body. 28. The ideas of the affections of the human body, in so far as they are related only to the human mind, are not clear and distinct, but confused. 29. The idea of any affection of the human body does not involve adequate knowledge of the human mind. 30. We can have only a very inadequate knowledge of the duration of our body. 31. We can have only a very inadequate knowledge of the duration of particular things external to us. 32. All ideas are true in so far as they are related to God. 33. There is nothing positive in ideas whereby they can be said to be false. 34. Every idea which is in us is absolute, that is, adequate and perfect, is true. 35. Falsity consists in the privation of knowledge, which inadequate ideas, that is, fragmentary and confused ideas, involve. 36. Inadequate and confused ideas follow by the same necessity as adequate or clear and distinct ideas. 37. That which is common to all things, and is equally in the part as a whole, does not constitute the essence of any one particular thing. 38. Those things that are common to all things, and are equally in the part as in the whole, can be conceived only adequately. 39. of that which is common and proper to the human body and to some external bodies by which the human body is customarily affected, and which is equally in the part as well as in the whole of any of those bodies, the idea also in the mind will be adequate. 40. Whatever ideas follow in the mind from ideas that are adequate in it are also adequate. 41. Knowledge of the first kind is the only cause of falsity. Knowledge of the second and third kind is necessarily true. 42. Knowledge of the second and third kind, and not knowledge of the first kind, teaches us to distinguish true from false. 43. She who has a true idea knows at the same time that she has a true idea and cannot doubt its truth. 44. It is not in the nature of reason to regard things as contingent, but as necessary. 45. Every idea of any body or particular thing existing in actuality necessarily involves the eternal and infinite essence of God. 46. The knowledge of the eternal and infinite essence of God, which every idea involves, is adequate and perfect. 47. The human mind has an adequate knowledge of the eternal and infinite essence of God. 48. In the mind there is no absolute or free will. The mind is determined to this or that volition by a cause, which is likewise determined by another cause, and this again by another, and so ad infinitum. 49. There is in the mind no volition, that is, affirmation and negation, except that which an idea, insofar as it is an idea, involves. Part 3. Concerning the origin and nature of the emotions. Definitions. 1. I call that an adequate cause, whose effect can be clearly and distinctly perceived through the said cause. I call that an inadequate or partial cause, whose effect cannot be understood through the said cause alone. 2. I say that we are active when something takes place in us or externally to us, of which we are the adequate cause, that is, by preceding definition, when from our nature there follows in us or externally to us something which can be clearly and distinctly understood through our nature alone. On the other hand, I say that we are passive when something takes place in us, or follows from our nature, of which we are the only partial cause. 3. By emotion, affect us. I understand the affections of the body, by which the body's power of activity is increased or diminished, assisted or checked, together with the ideas of those affections. Thus, if we can be the adequate cause of one of those affections, then by emotion I understand activity, otherwise passivity. Proposition 1. Our mind is in some instances active, and in other instances passive. Insofar as it has adequate ideas, it is necessarily active, and insofar as it has inadequate ideas, it is necessarily passive. 2. The body cannot determine the mind to think, nor can the mind determine the body to motion or rest, or to anything else, if there is anything else. 3. The active states, actions, of the mind arise only from adequate ideas. Its passive states depend solely on inadequate ideas. 4. No thing can be destroyed except by an external cause. 5. Things are of a contrary nature, that is, unable to subsist in the same subject, to the extent that one can destroy the other. 6. Each thing, insofar as it is in itself, endeavors to persist in its own being. 7. The conatus, to which each thing endeavors to persist in its own being, is nothing but the actual essence of the thing itself. 8. The conatus with which each single thing endeavors to persist in its own being does not involve finite time, but indefinite time. 9. The mind, both insofar as it has clear and distinct ideas, and insofar as it has confused ideas, endeavors to persist in its own being over an indefinite period of time, and is conscious of this conatus. 10. An idea that excludes the existence of our body cannot be in our mind, but is contrary to it. 11. Whatsoever increases or diminishes, assists or checks the power of activity of our body, the idea of the said thing increases or diminishes, assists or checks the power of thought of our mind. 12. The mind, as far as it can, endeavors to think of those things that increase or assist the body's power of activity. 13. When the mind thinks of those things that diminish or check the body's power of activity, it endeavors, as far as it can, to call to mind those things that exclude the existence of the former. 14. If the mind has once been affected by two emotions at the same time, when it is later affected by the one, it will also be affected by the other. 15. Anything can, indirectly, per accidens, be the cause of pleasure, pain, or desire. 16. From the mere fact that we imagine a thing to have something similar to an object that is wont to affect the mind with pleasure or pain, we shall love it or hate it, although the point of similarity is not the efficient cause of these emotions. 17. If we imagine that a thing which is wont to affect us with an emotion of pain has something similar to another thing which is wont to affect us with an equally great emotion of pleasure, we shall hate it and love it at the same time. 18. From the image of a thing, past or future, human is affected by the same emotion of pleasure or pain as from the image of a thing present. 19. She who imagines that what she loves is being destroyed will feel pain. If, however, she imagines that it is being preserved, she will feel pleasure. 20. She who imagines that a thing that she hates is being destroyed will feel pleasure. 21. She who imagines that what she loves is affected with pleasure or pain will likewise be affected with pleasure or pain, the intensity of which will vary with the intensity of the emotion in the object loved. 22. If we imagine that someone is affecting with pleasure the object of our love, we shall be affected with love towards them. If, on the other hand, we think that she is affecting with pain the object of one's love, we shall likewise be affected with hatred towards her. 23. She who imagines that what she hates is being affected with pain will feel pleasure. If, on the other hand, she thinks of it as affected with pleasure, she will feel pain. Both of these emotions will vary in intensity inversely with the variation of the contrary emotion in that which she hates. 24. If we imagine someone to be affecting with pleasure a thing that we hate, we shall be affected with hate towards her too. If, on the other hand, we think of her as affecting with pain said thing, we shall be affected with love towards her. 25. We endeavor to affirm of ourselves and of an object loved whatever we imagine affects us, or the loved object with pleasure, and, on the other hand, to negate whatever we imagine affects us, or the loved object with